Afternoon. It is 2:05 Wednesday. You know what? The sun's shining out there, so take advantage while it lasts. We'll get you to 5 o'clock together here on Afternoons Live. I'm Tyler Rax, your host. Eric Johnson, our producer. Full show for you as we get you ready for your drive time news and Twins baseball coming up a little bit later on. Speaking of Twins, it's Wednesday. That means Chris Atterbury, the studio host of your Minnesota Twins, is going to be joining us. Another wild win last night, still on top of the Central. We'll ask him about that. I want to thank Linex and Jiffy Lube for sponsoring that conversation. Also, we're going to be down in St. Paul. Bill Warner, our Capital correspondent with the Minnesota News Network. Been a lot of action out there since the last time him and I spoke, including the state of the state from Governor Walz. He did declare no special session. We'll see if he lives up to that or if we even need one a little bit later on. Also, yesterday we teased just a little bit about this hearing in front of Congress about the meat packers, fireworks, tensions. Rusty Halverson, our farm and ranch reporter, is going to be joining me to bring you some of the sounds of that and so much more coming up right after this KFGO News.
KFGO News, Fargo-Moorhead. It's sunny, 44. I'm Paul Juergens. 3 people are in the Clay County Jail in Moorhead following the seizure of about 1,100 fentanyl pills near Moorhead yesterday afternoon. Police say those suspects were arrested following a pursuit and traffic stop along I-94. It is believed to be one of the largest drug seizures ever in Fargo-Moorhead. The winners of a Mega Millions jackpot sold at a Suburban St. Paul convenience store have stepped forward. The couple took the cash option of nearly $67 million. They've decided to remain anonymous, which is allowed under a new state law. The couple told lottery administrators that they purchased scratch-off tickets at a pizza in April 1990 on the first day that scratch tickets were sold in Minnesota. It was also their first date. Ms. Lottery winner says she's been playing the same numbers for many years and discovered that she won when checking her phone the night of the April 12th drawing. Their immediate plans include buying a house, a car, and traveling. North Dakota's state revenue collections continue to outpace the forecast. State Office of Management and Budget Director Joe Morissette spoke to the legislature's Interim Government Finance Committee. He said the month's collections of sales tax and vehicle excise taxes remain strong. As for what the state will still have in the bank at the end of the biennium,
with that recognition that it's likely a conservative number because it assumes tracking even with the forecast for the remainder of the biennium, this would anticipate an ending balance of about $436 million in the general fund as of June 30 of 23.
Morissette says oil tax collections are running about 30% ahead of the forecast due to higher than expected prices with relatively flat production. North Dakota's oil industry wants lawmakers to change the framework for taxing crude production that abolishes what are known as price-based triggers. Unless oil prices suddenly decline, North Dakota's Treasury may start seeing the benefits of a tax increase on drillers that could bump state tax collections by billions of dollars. The current high crude prices are in contrast to just a few years ago when low oil prices threatened to trigger a tax break for drillers that would have cost the state money. Backers of doing away with triggers say it gives drillers certainty and keeps the industry jobs and revenue flowing. Fargo-Moorhead, partly sunny, approaching 49 for our high this afternoon, and then overnight, 36, partly to mostly cloudy. Little light rain is possible tomorrow, cloudy, 50. Clouds for Friday, chance of light rain in the afternoon, it looks like, and 53. Saturday, occasional rain, 50, and light rain possible again on Sunday, just 44. It is 44 degrees. Paul Juergens, News Radio, KFGO.
We will get into the highlights of last night when it comes to the regional sports, professionally speaking, because, well, yes, it's a highlight in the fact that the Twins won. Ugly how it happened, but you know what? We'll take the W over the Detroit Tigers with Sano. People wondering, what are you doing, man? But it just maybe this is the year that those ridiculous moments in professional baseball and the MLB, maybe they go our way for a change. Maybe this is the year we've been waiting for. But I didn't watch that in real time. I found myself watching the Timberwolves. And I've got to say, it has been a very long time since I've lost sleep because my frustration and adrenaline had kicked in so much over a basketball game. But oh my word, last night, if you didn't catch it, it was yet another evening in which you've got the Minnesota Timberwolves young team. And I really do think that's exactly what was on display, especially latter into that second half of that young team that was rushing, weren't setting up an offense. They were just out there, and there was a couple of examples that stand out to me towards another double-digit lead blown. And in the last moments, Memphis, of course, edging by and winning. And now we're going to be coming back to Target Center, I believe, Friday, because obviously tomorrow we've got the draft, which our draft party, everyone's invited. You can come on out to the Hi-Ho. Our coverage starts at 4 o'clock. I'm not getting there till after the show, but I think Derek Hansen will be there, shaking hands, kissing babies, all that, at Hi-Ho, South 25th Street, right here. So there are going to be a lot of things that you can do. You can get entered a chance to win a trip to Kansas City in 2023 to attend the NFL draft in person next year. So there's another incentive to get on out there. So I think the Timberwolves are in Target Center Friday. I'm looking for a nod in my head. Okay, yes, that is in fact the case. So we could still tie it up, but take statistics for what they're worth. I think in a tied series, whoever wins game 5, which was last night, has like an 82% chance of winning. So I know here we are, that Minnesota sports mentality that here we are again. Yeah, I think it's pretty arguable that Minnesota might have the better team. Maybe that's me and being naive, which will mark that as the first 2 minutes of the show on a Wednesday that I'm acknowledging that. But it's that youth, it's that young mentality to where when you got Cat turning around and doing a fade, when you have it was frustrating. Let me know if you watched it. You can text me all day today on the iConsults of North Dakota Text Club. That's at 35270. The Laney studio line will be open all day today as well. That's at 237-5948. It's not necessarily over. I get that because I think they've proven that they can win both at home and in Memphis. But boy, did they do themselves no favors last night. Exciting. It's a fun young team that I think if we're able to bottle this up and sprinkle it out over the next couple of years, I'll be in. I'll be watching a lot more than I've probably ever watched the NBA, dating all the way back to the Chicago Bulls era of Michael Jordan. But it just was frustrating for me. One thing that I want to touch on before we really spend a lot of time talking about, well, quite frankly, the world events, including kind of following up on something that we discussed yesterday in regards to the ethanol plant at Thoroldson, saying, well, we're not in favor of the location of this soybean plant that's being proposed. Some more tips going my way. I want to thank everybody in that area, in the Castleton area, that has been reaching out, albeit I understand that there's some leeriness of maybe going on record from time to time. I vastly appreciate all the insight as to what's going on in your community. And I shouldn't have to apologize. I'm not the one that's responsible for it, but I feel I'm sorry that it's been brought upon you that you have now had to look at your neighbor and try to discuss these things in a way that's probably uncomfortable. That's where I keep coming back to the process. But there's been more things sent my way, and I'll get to that a little bit later on. But you just heard Paul Jurgens of the KFGO News Center talk about the large fentanyl busts that happened in this area. Now, one thing about living where we do, we have these major roadways. They're called interstates, which we're right on, the crossing of two. And I know that there's been discussion when we've had law enforcement on talking about the trafficking that can sometimes happen here. But hearing that large bus in conjunction with some of the other social media things that I've seen, you all know, if you're a regular listener, that, I've been here long enough to consider this is now home, this area, but I grew up in Benson County. And when you have a smaller population-sized county like that, and Benson County putting out through their sheriff's department, through their social media, having to warn people that there's been a large increase in fentanyl situation and discovery in that county, you know that all of this is somehow increasing in its presence across the state. So the fact that the good old boys and girls of law enforcement here were able to make that large of a bust, good job, guys. Good job. I mean, just thank God they're getting this stuff off the streets, and we'll be following along as to what else follows along with that. 237-5948, Lady Studio line open, and of course the text club, I'll come back to that at 35270. It's Wednesday afternoon, sun shining. I can tell there's put a smile on a lot of people's faces. We'll come back to you right after this here on KFGO. Time 2:18. A couple of things coming your way in just a little bit. We're going to be heading down to Minneapolis, St. Paul for a good chunk of today, as we typically do on a Wednesday. But one of the things that I'm sure we're going to be diving into a little bit more, a little bit later on, as we've been waiting. There's all these decisions that are being made that I don't think are doing those people on those local levels enough justice here. And one of them is going to be out in Bismarck in the Mandan. My understanding was that there was a request earlier for the Attorney General in North Dakota, which is now Drew Wrigley, to weigh in on an opinion about the railroad bridge over there and choosing not to do so. Got to get a little bit more information on that. I know that there's people out there that are diving through some of the details, but what are you doing then if you're not going to be weighing in on some of this when you've got a lawmaker and you've got other concerned citizens, which are across the board and what their beliefs and opinions are? What are you paying you to do out there then is one of my questions once we get some of those details a little bit later on here this afternoon. If you got any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear from you. You know how to get a hold of us. In the meantime, I do want to talk a little bit about something that happened out in Washington when it comes to this whole Kevin McCarthy thing. We've not really talked about it because we've had the audio tape, and you know, to to me, it wasn't exactly new, except for the fact that he came out and said that, I didn't really go and tell or ask Donald Trump to resign following that insurrection. The thing that caught my attention today is the fact that you've got these closed-door meetings that happen out there when you get your caucus together, meaning all the other Republicans and the House were there, and you got a standing ovation from a majority of them that are in that room. And now this has been sprinkled out, of course, through media. You don't want to have anybody that's wanting to put necessarily their name to it. It's all by sources in the room said. But it's telling to me that after the controversy of all this with, say, like the Tucker Carlsons of the world, which arguably are now the face of the Republican Party, last night throwing McCarthy under the bus in a pretty public fashion. Saying that he's controlled by the Democrats, which is quite laughable if you've been following along. Over the course of, the last 20 years, Democrats can't even control their own behavior, let alone Tucker or Kevin McCarthy. But that standing ovation and the applause that those members gave McCarthy after this audio leaked, doesn't that tell you something as far as what is stated publicly from some of these politicians versus what they might be thinking privately and what they're afraid to say in front of the average member, the average individual that's in the base of the voting block, what you're trying to get out now in the midterms? I just found it interesting, and it makes me question whether or not the majority that stood up and applauded him for the way he handled this, even though he lied about it here after the fact, if they just feel the same way. Is saying that, going back to that immediate after the fact, what you heard the actions that were unfolding during this very program, a lot of you were listening, and it was pretty gut-wrenching to be reporting, and we were able to thankfully report back at that time that our delegation was in fact safe and their staff were safe. But that immediate impact, remember the comments, whether it was Mitch McConnell or Liz Cheney or Kevin McCarthy, who's out here saying now the opposite of what he actually said because we got audio, there's proof there. There weren't just a sprinkling of those voices. It was the majority. And now that we've been removed from it, they've kind of slinked back into that pre-January 6th attack conversation again because it's an election year being won. And the writing's on the wall that, if we get these people out to vote, we're going to sweep a lot of these districts. I mean, Joe Biden completely underwater in a lot of the states. And in fact, I apologize to those that sent messages in yesterday. And I can offer you the opportunity to call me today and explain why North Dakota gives him and this administration the second worst rating and second worst approval rating, that is, in the entire country, behind only West Virginia. Explain why. Give me reasons. 35270. I'll get to them today. I apologize I didn't yesterday. Or you can call me on the Laney studio line as well at 237-5948. But you have this positioning again, and I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it's upfront, and it's not consistent as far as what's being told to you from those members in front of a camera into a microphone like this versus what they're telling each other while the cameras are off and the microphone is put away as well. Does it bother you at all? Or is it just that same old that, at least it's better than the alternative? Because that's what they're banking on in this midterm election is, at least I'm not that party or I'm not that individual. Is that going to be enough to carry it over for you? 35270, I'll come back to that. I'm getting a number of messages in here, and I want to really get into the details here. It's a lengthy email I just received, but it goes back to what we were talking about yesterday. And if you missed the conversation, I know there's been a lot of downloads on our podcast with Thoraldson's ethanol plant out in Castleton. Ryan Thorpe, I appreciated his time. Not everyone agreed with his commentary, but that's what we do is we provide an opportunity for them to speak to that. But I'd ask about timing as far as why you waited until hours before the zoning and planning meeting comes and gavels in to decide whether or not they should be moving forward on changing that plot of land near Castleton, near that ethanol plant, to then coming out in opposition to this. I can tell you since then, and since that conversation, there's been more of that has been rolling out, and I have an email that has been sent out, and I'm going to give you some of the details here in between the KFGO and CBS News, because you've got individuals now from the banking sector that have come out and showing support on this crushing plant. You're seeing other people, as far as those concerned citizens, rallying around the fact that now you've got one of the major industries, one of the major names coming out in opposition. We got to get those that are in support on as well, that equal opportunity, come out and say, this is why we want you to do this, because this vote going to be taking place on Monday. And you've got just a handful of people that are elected in that local position to make that ultimate decision here. Now, over the course of the last, do I dare say 4 months? How long has it been since we've really started the conversations? What has come to light of Grand Forks, Castleton, those other areas along the CO2 pipeline, how important that local election is wherever you're listening to me. Now, I know visiting with the crew up in Grand Forks that saying if they're not going to allow this vote, if they go this way, some of these people are going to be a one-term individual in local office. That's what you have routine elections for. But if there's ever been a time, more recent, that's more eye-opening than these three instances of how important it is to be paying attention and being active in your local elections, this is it. These decisions ultimately are coming down to those individuals. And I'm going to tell you more about this story when we come back here in a little bit later on. We're also going to be joined by Rusty Halverson, not about this crushing plant, but about the meat packers and what they're doing out in Congress right now. They're frustrated. They're deeming that people are lying about their industry, that there's this is about the current administration trying to have a boogeyman, which we'll talk about who, in fact, started the investigation and who requested the investigation. Because if you recall, and a lot of you want to champion this, it was the last administration underneath Donald Trump that did try to get the Department of Justice to look into these meat packers. I'll come back with more details on this email. You can join the conversation as well. 237-5948. You can also text in to 35270. This is Afternoons Live. It's Wednesday afternoon. I'm Tyler Axis. You either got it locked into 790 AM, 94.1, or 104.7 FM, KFGO.
KFGO News, Fargo-Moorhead, sunny, now 45 degrees. I'm Paul Jurgens. North Dakota's acting U.S. attorney and a district judge in Jamestown are among the finalists for an open district judgeship in Fargo. The Judicial Nominating Committee sent the names of 4 applicants to Governor Doug Burgum, who has conducted interviews. The person selected would replace East Central District Judge Thomas Olson, who is retiring for health reasons. Acting U.S. Attorney Nick Chase, Southeast Judicial District Judge Cherie Clark, Fargo Attorney Monty Mertz, and East Central District Court Judicial Referee Stephanie Hayden are the finalists. A spokesman for Governor Burgum says he expects to make an announcement on the vacancy by the end of the week. The Red River is fluctuating at just under 46 feet today in Grand Forks, East Grand Forks. That's 18 feet over flood stage. The red hit a high of 45.82 feet early this morning. Greg Gust with the National Weather Service says the water will not disappear overnight, but he says it should not be a prolonged event either. There's one wild card. That's the potential for more precipitation at the end of the week.
The water's coming off the landscape quickly, so you should expect the rivers to go down a little more quickly than the typical winter snowmelt runoff, somewhere between this and what a summer peak would be.
45, sunny. This is KFGO News. .45, this is KFGO News. The winners of a Mega Millions jackpot sold at a suburban St. Paul convenience store stepped forward. The couple took the cash option of nearly $67 million. They have decided to remain anonymous, which is allowed under a new state law. The couple told lottery administrators that they purchased scratch-off tickets and a pizza in April 1990. On the first day that scratch tickets were sold in Minnesota, it was also their first date. Their immediate plans include buying a house, a car, and traveling. A report from the Minnesota Department of Human Rights conducted after the murder of George Floyd has found that the Minneapolis Police Department is engaged in a pattern of discrimination.
Minnesota's Department of Human Rights Commissioner Rebecca Lucero went through the 72-page report outlining examples of race-based policing, looking at more than 700 hours of body camera video and much data. She says they found racial disparities in how officers use force, stop, search, and arrest, and white people of color, particularly black individuals, compared to white individuals in similar circumstances. She says they found that officers often used covert social media to monitor black individuals and black organizations unrelated to criminal activity.
We also see MPD's officers' consistent use of racist, misogynic, and otherwise disrespectful language.
The city, by law, will have to make these recommended changes.
That's reporter Susie Jones. A Bismarck man has been sentenced to 6 years in prison for a 2021 New Year's Day crash that killed a South Dakota woman in Bismarck. 20-year-old Kenyon Eagle pleaded guilty in January. A South Central District judge suspended all but 6 years of a 15-year prison sentence. Eagle was accused of driving drunk and going the wrong way in the westbound lanes of the Bismarck Expressway. His pickup collided head-on with a car driven by Tiffany Shaving of Cherry Creek, South Dakota. She died at the scene. 2 passengers in her car were hurt. Partly sunny and near 49 for our high this afternoon. Fargo-Moorhead, 36 under a partly to mostly cloudy sky overnight. Clouds tomorrow, a chance of light rain, 50. Also a chance of rain Friday, cloudy, and 53. Partly sunny, 46 degrees. Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
Rusty Overson in the KFGO studio.
Hello.
Hi, man.
Hello.
Boy, you should see the emails I've just been reading about good old Castleton and the development, the conversation that we had yesterday. I'm not going to pull you into it.
Okay.
But agriculture, certainly top of mind in this area. We're going to have a long conversation about that.
Absolutely.
A little bit later on, in fact, you and I are going to have a longer conversation about the meat packing hearings that happened.
Yeah, we're going to dive into it a little bit next hour. Yesterday, of course, we talked about the Senate Ag Committee holding a hearing on a Cattle Price Transparency Act being sponsored by Chuck Grassley, Deb Fisher of Nebraska, co-sponsored by many other senators. Today, the House Agriculture Committee talking about possible unfair practices in the cattle markets, discrepancies in prices, transparency in prices too. And it was quite the hearing earlier today.
Yeah, well, fireworks, to put it lightly. I mean, you came in with a number of points that were going on, and one of them being a baseless narrative, the other saying there's blood on people's hands in this room as far as Congress goes as well. This is pretty heavy accusations, that are coming out in a congressional hearing.
Yeah, and we'll bring you the audio next hour. But what's concerning to me is there is a divide, whether it's this cattle legislation. What I'm concerned about is we are just ahead of a new farm bill and a farm bill debate. In fact, the first farm bill listening session will be held this Friday. Michigan State University, Debbie Stabenow, Senate Ag Committee, Ranking Member John Bozeman will be, it's a listening session. They're going to gather input from producers. Normally, lawmakers don't do a whole lot of talking during these sessions. They listen. That's the point. Hence the name. I'm doing air quotes here.
Yeah, air quotes for radio.
Yeah, so we'll listen in on that. But some of this contentious, I shouldn't say bipartisan, it's partisan. I'm not going to say bickering yet, but people are kind of drawing a line in the sand, kind of marking off their territory. And if it draws, if it leaks over into the farm bill debate, that could draw out that debate, and that's what we don't need to see.
I think that's a fair concern, because one of the things that you pointed out to me caught my attention. It came down to the partisanship that's coming from the industry and what this, and we'll get into that next hour.
Sure.
Right? Very good. Block off your schedule.
Okay.
I want you in here for a long time, because you got a lot of information that we're going to be playing back for people, but I appreciate the check in this hour, man.
Absolutely.
Rusty Halverson, KFGO.com. You can check out his work with Sarah Heinrich as well. Just click on that agriculture tab. I'm going to get you caught up with CBS National News. We're going to check in with Bill Warner, Capitol correspondent of Minnesota News Network. That's right after this. Then, we'll talk more about the ethanol plant and their opposition to the soybean proposal. We had that conversation yesterday. I know there's been a lot of downloads at KFGO's page. Just click on the podcast wherever you get them, Afternoons Live. We'll address that a little bit later on here on KFGO. recess, but they're back in town now. And I know that Governor Walz had his State of the State just the other day. And part of that conversation that he had in front of lawmakers, aside from saying, you got to get this done, was the fact that at the end of that request was because we're not getting a special session. That ain't happening. I ain't calling you back. So you've got until your deadline to get all the T's crossed and your I's dotted there. We'll see if, in fact, he lives up to that word, and we'll see what the latest is out in St. Paul with Bill Werner, who is connected with us here on KFGO. Bill, how you doing, man? There's been a lot going on out there.
Oh, you have that right. Where should we start?
Let's start with the governor laying down his stake at the State of the Union, saying you either get it done or it ain't happening. There's no special session.
Yeah, and he indicated that, and we'll have to see whether he means it or not. I think a lot of it, and I'm not suggesting I don't believe what the governor says, but there are often cases where in these negotiations you get close, and often in recent legislative sessions it has been they're very close, and it's a matter of just a little additional time to wrap everything up, and so have a quick special session to get this all finished up. So we'll have to see, but at least I think he's drawing the line in the sand that we're not going to continue all through the summer on this. That this needs to be wrapped up at the end of the appointed time, which is May 23rd, and which we are rapidly approaching. Needless to say,
it's coming. It's coming here in a hurry. But you know what? Hearing that stake in the ground, I keep thinking about our caller just not very long ago saying, you know what, they shouldn't get paid if they have to go do this special session. So,
well, there have been proposals for that. Believe me.
The problem with it is it's those people that are getting paid that make the decision whether or not they're going to get paid.
There's a little bit of a self-regulation issue there, isn't there?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, he also laid out some of the, his priorities. You've got the $1 billion in a surplus.
Right.
Was there anything new in what he remarked than what he said prior to recess?
No, not really. And this is what we expected, that he said, hey, okay, tax cuts, however, none of them can go to the wealthy. He said we need to prioritize investments in education. One of the things that did catch folks' attention was he did put a fair amount of emphasis on some human service type programs, basically dealing with increasing reimbursements to long-term care providers, and hence wages to those folks who are doing the frontline work in those areas. And so that sounds like there may be some room for negotiations in that particular area when we get further on down the legislative session. That is what actually the Senate Republicans are pushing for that pretty hard. They passed their Health and Human Services bill off the floor just yesterday, and that has a significant increase. It's about $1 billion of the surplus that is going to basically beef up state reimbursements to long-term care facilities, personal care attendants, and those kinds of professions, or those kinds of facilities, I should say, because there's a shortage of personnel there, and the Republicans are hoping that will they say that will lessen some of that problem, some of that shortage. So they're hoping that with the governor's comments in the State of the State address that maybe there's some common ground there. We'll have to see, but at least it's a little bit of an indication that there might be something.
Well, the other side of the hallway, I guess is what I'll put it, when it comes to what the House is up to. We've been going back and forth. Do you replenish the unemployment insurance portfolio, these heroes checks? Right. It sounds like they came up with somewhat of a compromise.
Well, it was an offer. The House passed a bill and said, okay, what we'll do is we'll give the Senate all that they want in terms of refilling the unemployment insurance trust fund, $2.7 billion, thereby avoiding or forestalling business tax increases. But they said, in addition to that, we need to have $1 billion for the COVID frontline worker bonuses, the hero pay bonuses. This is something that has been talked about for some period of time, and the House leaders floated this proposal pretty much right at the beginning of the legislative session. Now it's formally in a bill, and it's sent off to the Senate, and the Senate said, well, no, we don't agree with that, so we're going to go to a conference committee, in other words, negotiations with the House on this. So that's where it's at. Another thing that is interesting, too, another wrinkle in this, and you and I have been talking about this, Tyler, and how many wrinkles has this had over the last year, right? Okay.
Plenty.
All right.
It's aged.
The latest Yeah, right. The latest wrinkle is that this bill that the House passed also would extend unemployment benefit, would allow school workers, part-time school workers. I'm talking about bus drivers, seasonal workers, and so on. Bus drivers and food service workers and the like who work the school year but don't work during the summer. It would allow them to draw unemployment benefits for the summer as well. That is something that the Republicans are not receptive to, and that's going to be a potential sticking point in negotiations. Now, whether it's just a throwaway proposal, we put it out there, and so we're prepared to give it up, or whether in fact it's a serious, solid thing that they are going to run with and go to the wire for, remains to be seen. So we're going to have to see what happens on that. The deadline, there have been many deadlines here, but at least the deadline now that is being talked about is April 30th, when essentially those tax payments officially come due. And whether they're able to wrap it up before then remains to be seen. There are some who are saying, including the Speaker of the Minnesota House, who really hinted and said, well, we don't really have to do this by April 30th, that the State Revenue Department can back those out in terms of crediting employers' accounts. So, there's going to be a push, probably up to this weekend, maybe through the weekend, and whether they get it now, get the deal now or not, it's anybody's guess. There's so much politics swirling around this one, Tyler, that I don't have any.
Well, you caught my attention. People listening as well, and I'm going to throw this out there a little bit later on about whether or not people agree that some of those individuals, whether the school bus drivers, those cooks, or those other those people in that school district, if they should be able to access unemployment during the summer months. I'm going to throw that out there a little bit later on. But in a little bit of time I've got left, there's two things left, and I think they're kind of, they're butted up against each other. One being the law enforcement, the policing reform. Earlier today, this is the second topic of that. The Minnesota or the Minneapolis Police Department, they have this report comes out that it did in fact engage in a pattern or practice of discrimination. Race-based policing was evidenced. I'm curious, what's the latest on this one, Bill?
Yeah, and that was an investigation by the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, and you're correct. They said that there's probable cause that the city of Minneapolis and MPD engage in a pattern or practice of race discrimination in violation of state law, and they're citing a number of items, including racial disparities in how MPD officers use force, stop, search, arrest, and cite people of color. MPD officers' use of covert social media to perform surveillance on black individuals and black organizations unrelated to criminal activity. MPD's officers' consistent use of racist, misogynistic, and disrespectful language. Those kinds of things. The report says, without fundamental organizational cultural changes, reforming MPD's policies, procedures, and trainings will be meaningless. I'm reading from the actual summary of the report here, Tyler.
Okay.
And now, so then they say, where do we go from here? The State Department of Human Rights says it will work with the city to develop a consent decree. Now, that's a court-enforceable agreement that identifies specific changes to be made and timelines for those changes to occur. That's a little bit different. That's a little different level of thing that has happened in the past. You have had policy changes mandated by the police department, by city council, by the mayor, and so on. But a consent decree, which is monitored by a judge, presumably an impartial person, right? That's a much stronger level of enforcement of change. So we'll have to see what happens. That's the one thing, the consent decree, we'll see whether this thing really has teeth.
I'll be curious if this trickles into the conversation in the Capitol there as well, as we're talking about policing reforms.
You can be sure it will. Yeah.
The House is picking this up, and they're saying, "Well, let's do something statewide here." I have no doubt about that as well, Bill.
Well, it's going to. There'll be impetus for that certainly, but it's a question of whether, in the swirl of everything else, it will. And another thing, this kind of thing, and the fact that it's a Department of Human Rights investigation, and that it's focused on MPD, and they're going to get a consent decree. That also may be, for lack of a better term, an excuse by some to not deal with it right at this particular point. I'm talking about from the legislature's standpoint. So we'll have to see.
Lots to cover. You know what, Bill? But I'm out of time. I appreciate the check-in this week. I tell you what, though, we'll have more to catch up on next week, I have no doubt.
Yeah, it's going to be probably even busier by then.
Probably. Well, if they're working hard, we better have a lot to cover up and say, hey, you know what? It's all done. This is a done deal, Bill. That's optimistic.
Well, we're not there yet, Tyler.
I'm afraid of that. Bill, I appreciate it, my friend. You take care.
Okay. Yep. You too.
All right. Bill Werner, Capital Correspondent, Minnesota News Network. Messages coming in to 35270. I'll get to all those, but I got to get you this weather update from Too Tall Tom Szymanski. We'll wrap up the first hour on a Wednesday afternoon of Afternoons Live next. Eric Johnson's my producer, and he's been working diligently to try to get this done. But I've been teasing around about, yesterday we had a conversation, and we've been having. In fact, we were the first to start this conversation about what's going on in Castleton with this proposal of a soybean plant out there, and the latest development being that you had Thoroldson Ethanol coming out in opposition to the location. That's what they're saying, and There's been some people that say, well, it can't just be about location, can it? If you missed that conversation, wherever you get your podcast. But, well, there was a lot of people listening yesterday. A lot of people listening to that podcast overnight and through today as well. And, there's been some other exchanges because, there's people that are in favor of this. And I want to provide an opportunity to them to have their voices heard on this very platform of Afternoons Live on KFGO as well. And one of those being, the bank president in Castleton at Bank North, Brad Sessler, I believe, sends an email about, the conversation that Ryan Thorpe and I had on this airwave yesterday, but really taking some of the comments made from Mr. Thorpe from Thoroldson Ethanol, taking that to task in quite vivid detail in the email that I've got here. We did put a call in to try to get Brad on today. Now, granted, we've got 2 hours left, and we offered at least a time. And I hope if he or someone else at the bank's listening, give him a nudge. I'd love to have the conversation with him and explain why why he is upset with what Ryan Thorpe said yesterday and why he's in favor of this project. It's an open platform, and I'm just curious what he has to say about that. So if anyone's out there and could let him know, hey, got your email, we'd love to have your voice on this very program today or tomorrow. 237-5948. That's the Lenny studio line. Of course, you could also text into 35270, the iConsultants of North Dakota Text Club. When we come back after CBS National News, well, Chris Adberry, he's a studio host of your Minnesota Twins. We're going to talk about the exciting week that was for that organization when we come back right here on KFGO. 3:05. Here's a little what happened on this date. 1979, Black Sabbath split with Ozzy Osbourne on this date. Now, you have some artists that were, say, the lead of a band, and then they went and started their solo projects. Did Ozzy turn out better after Black Sabbath, do you think? Or was Black Sabbath Ozzy Osbourne's prime? I've generally asked that question. Because you think about other, like Sammy Hagar, right? I don't know if that was some of his solo work or if that was when he was part of Van Halen. I think about Faces and Rod Stewart. Well, was that more of his solo project? Was it while he was with Faces? I don't know. Same with Ozzy Osbourne. A lot of it probably with Black Sabbath. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, to me, my favorite Ozzy song, Crazy Train, is an Ozzy solo, not a Black Sabbath.
That is your favorite
I think
Ozzy
so,
song?
yeah. I've got specific memories why it's my favorite, because that used to be the closing song of a band at the barn every time.
All right, because you're probably
nostalgia.
Probably alone in that being the top Ozzy song of Crazy Train. Also, there's another thing that I wanted to get to just quickly. The most expensive song to license for a movie or a TV show is?
Something Beatles.
Thunderstruck.
What?
AC/DC.
What?
NBCU's getting away with it. Hopefully nobody says anything publicly.
Keep it down.
No, the Swanee boys that got that thing started. You want to get that checkbook out there, Swanee. Let's get you caught up with Paul Jurgens in the KFGO News Center. When we come back, Chris Atterbury. Let's talk Twins.
KFGO News, sunny 46. A Sanford Health AirMed fixed-wing air ambulance collided with a bird in Fargo this morning. AirMed Director Tim Meyer tells KFGO News that plane was departing Hector International Airport when the collision happened. Meyer says due to the fast response of the pilot, the plane landed safely. There was one patient on board. There were no injuries to the patient or flight crew. The airplane, which is based in Dickinson, sustained minor damage. 3 people are in the Clay County Jail following the seizure of about 1,100 fentanyl pills near Moorhead. Police say those suspects were arrested following a pursuit and traffic stop along I-94. It is believed to be one of the largest drug seizures ever in Clay County, with the street value put at $37,000. Methamphetamine was also seized. A state investigation launched after George Floyd was killed by a Minneapolis police officer has determined the department engages in a pattern of race discrimination. Minnesota's Department of Human Rights announced the finding of the nearly 2-year investigation. The department has the power to enforce the state's Human Rights Act, which makes it illegal for police departments to discriminate against someone due to their race. There may be times again this summer when we see smoke from wildfires in the western part of the country and Canada. Nick Whitcraft is the air quality manager for the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency.
There may be an above normal season in Canada, which means we'll probably see a few days with impactful smoke. Hopefully not as impactful as last season, but we could expect a few days with smoke. And of course, with the dryness in the western U.S., we will see smoke make it over Minnesota, but that smoke tends to stay aloft.
Whitcraft says about 2% of Minnesota is considered in drought. Last year at this time, it was 10%. KFGO Weather Center forecast near 49 for this afternoon high with a partly to mostly sunny sky. 36, some clouds overnight, partly to mostly cloudy. Clouds tomorrow 50 with a chance of light rain. Also, rain chance on Friday, cloudy, rain possible in the afternoon, then 53. Sunny and 46. Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
A win is a win is a win. I don't care how it happens as long as we keep accumulating those wins. And last night, boy, it was ugly, but it was a win. Take any and all. Chris Atterbury, the studio host for your Minnesota Twins. is brought to you by Linex and now Jiffy Lube. You can get more done in a jiffy with Jiffy Lube with their 3 convenient locations. Chris, I don't even know how to begin. It was that shouting at the radio of Snow, what are you doing? To yes, keep going. It was unusual last night, man.
You just got to keep the pressure on, right? That's the deal. And it's funny because it's a play that probably every Little League coach ever, whether they're coaching softball, t-ball, coach pitch, whatever it is, they've told their kid and their friend's kid, hey, don't run up the back of the guy in front of you. Make sure you see the ball through. And they've all told the catcher in that situation, run the ball back to the base. And here you've got, guys who get paid a lot of money and are the greatest skill in the world at what they do, and they still can make a mistake now and again. So you just never know how it's going to turn out. But as you said, take it any way you can. Let those good times keep rolling. Twins back over 500, and they won 5 straight.
Yeah. Last week, you and I ended our conversation saying, hopefully next week we're talking about some wins. Well, we got them. Yeah. We did. It's been it's been entertaining. It all starts, of course, everyone across the entire league watching Byron Buxton now back doing what he's doing. One of our coworkers, Amy Eiler from a show right before us, and It Takes Two, had her kids to that game on Sunday, and they stayed through the whole thing. And I tell you what, for those kids, well worth it. For us as fans, just well worth it. It's so exciting, Chris.
It's funny you mentioned that she had her kids there because my daughter was there. First game that my family's been to since before the pandemic. And so they were like, it's cold. I don't know. Should we go? Grabbed a couple friends, came on down, and boy, are they ever happy they did. Byron, I think I've said it a billion times. He's just a difference maker, a field tilter, a guy who's worth the price of a ticket, and he proved that. And what's nice is that on days when he's not the hero, you need to figure out ways to win ball games. And yesterday it was Max and Gio Urshela, who had all the hits for a while. And then, for all of the base running buffoonery and the throwing gaff, Miguel Sano hits a tar out of that baseball in right field to get that whole thing started. So it takes other people. And these guys they got a little pixie dust right now, which is fun. And the fun part is they get it. They understand that. Like, they're like, yeah, we've had some breaks, and we feel like we can make breaks, and we feel like, like we're in this together. And so they don't take it for granted, but they recognize that they've got the kind of a little special dust around them right now.
Yeah, whether it's the walk-off home run or the walk-off, whatever you want to call it yesterday, it's they're finding ways to get it done. And I'm talking not just about getting 9-10 runs in. I mean, we were able to beat the White Sox with Duffy getting his first win. I mean, 2-1. You go back to Kansas City, 1-0. I mean, even when we're not just accumulating all these runs, they're finding ways to win, and that's what we've been asking this whole time.
And the key to that is just you got to be in games, and the only way you can be in games is with good starting pitching. And obviously, the starting pitching has been very solid, even without Sonny Gray. And Josh Winder's not a starter, but I'd throw him in there too. Nobody's throwing Max Scherzer-like games, but they're throwing 5-6 innings, and they're not letting the game get out of hand. And so that's how you can be in a position to eventually win one late. And if you've got a guy like Byron on your team, you can win games late if you're lurking around. So, I'll throw this in. On Sunday, Buck hits the 2 home runs, and that's what we're talking about, justifiable, right? The biggest play in that game to me was Trevor Larnach throws out a guy at home plate in that third inning. The game was, third inning. The game's about to get out of control. Bases are loaded. 2 are in. Archer's on fumes. Winder's warming up. They're not going to bring Winder in as this quasi-starter and a rookie with runners on. He's never had an inherited runner. They're not going to put him in that messy spot. So it's like, all right, Arch, it's up to you to get us out of the inning. If Larnach throws offline, or if the catcher, Godoy, drops the ball, who's another great story, pushed into duty at the last minute, there's second and third, 3 runs in, still only 1 out, and you are in a world of hurt, and it might be 6-0 instead of 2-0, and then maybe you never get a chance to make a comeback. Mm-hmm. But because of that big play, okay, now Winder gets a clean sheet, he goes 4+, and the Twins are lurking, and they get a chance to win the game. So little things matter, and right now this team's doing enough little things to win, and what I like is the wins are in the division. Right. 5 straight wins is great. 5 straight wins in your division is even better. because that means every time you're in the left-hand column, somebody you're fighting with in the Central is in the right-hand column.
Well, I remember pulling up just the standings last week at this time in Minnesota in the AL Central. We were last, and now we pull it up and we're first. So you're right. You know, the importance of these games, of course, accumulating wins and getting that confidence, but to have it against other opponents in your division, just all that much more important as we hit this. It's not cruise control. That's not how I want to describe it, but it feels just more at ease. There's more comfort. There's more energy. It just seems like there's fun being had on the field. It's a special time to be watching. I know it's so early yet, but you know we got another one with Detroit later on tonight. I'm curious what you're expecting a little bit later on.
Well, Joe Ryan's pitching against Michael Pineda, and so it's polar opposites there. Joe Ryan is all about energy and bouncing around and working quickly, pounding the strike zone. He's been really solid, and kind of his team has a little extra bounce in their step when he throws, and playing behind him is a lot of fun. And then you've got Big Mike, who we adore, but Big Mike is a slow worker on the mound. He's big, and he's sweating, and he's moving his arms around, and he's trying to get loose. He's doing what they call the Big Mike dance. And then, of course, he throws 5 innings, 1 run, 4 hits, because he's mind-numbingly consistently effective down in the strike zone. So it's polar opposites. It's the old plow horse, and it's the young whippersnapper, and they both kind of end up getting to the same place, which is usually around 5 innings with 1 or 2 runs allowed and a handful of strikeouts, but they get there very differently. So that's what I'm watching tonight.
One thing that caught my attention, I know this is not top of his mind, but you know, of course, we'll nibble on any speculation we can about Correa expressing interest, because when we had this exciting offseason move that, oh wow, he's coming here, well, this could just be a 1-year thing. It's early, I get it, but you know, take a nibble at it with me, Chris. He's expressing interest in a long-term commitment with the Twins. I mean, is it because of the team that's around him right now? Is it? Why do you think that he would express that so early on this season?
I think he expressed it because he was asked it by Ken Rosenthal. And what are you going to say? No, I hate it. I can't wait to opt out. Right? No, come out of here. 150 more games, and we're already packed. He does like this group, and he fits in beautifully, and he's a wonderful addition to the group. And obviously, if the Twins offered him 10 years, $300 million, you know, the type of deal that he was looking for before, you know, I'm sure after his experience here, he'd be eager to sign on the dotted line. Are the Twins going to offer a 10-year, $300 million deal? No, that seems unlikely. It's a great marriage right now. It was a marriage of convenience after the lockout, but I've said this before. It's a win for all involved. Whether Carlos is here for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or he signs a long-term deal and retires a Twin and we put his number up on the wall, any of those outcomes are positive outcomes. His fingerprints on this club and this clubhouse and this group are awesome. And he's going to start hitting. That's inevitable. Right. We haven't seen even the beginnings of what he can do as an offensive player. But just enjoy him while he's here. And I would encourage people not to get too worried about how long it's going to be, but just enjoy him while he's here, because it's tremendous positive force for this club.
Well, and there's 2 things you touched on there. One, the fact that he hasn't really started hitting yet, and he will, and then look out, you know, as far as what this offense can do and getting these runs in, especially if everyone stays healthy. What I ask is because when you watch, even if it was last night, the way of which this team seems to rally around each other and celebrate, it just seems like there's a kinsmanship that's on that field, that's on display, that these guys really seem to enjoy each other. And I think
I agree with
people
that.
want to be a part of it.
This is a good group. It's a good combination, and Carlos is a big part of that. He's a guy who is a very commanding presence in a very disarming way in a clubhouse. He's respected by everybody. He tries to get to know you on a personal level. He's really, really, really good at that. Not every good player and not every veteran is like that. And in the past couple of years, some of our talented veterans who are no longer here were definitely not like that. And for him to be that type of a guy, no ego, he understands he's the new guy. He and Byron are kind of like a team. There's so much love and respect there. They've known each other since they were in that same draft together 1-2. I think it's really awesome. It's a great combination. There's not a single negative about having Carlos Correa in the Twins clubhouse.
Chris, it's fun. Winning cures a lot of things.
Winning's fun.
It is. I hope we can continue on starting tonight. We'll let you go. We'll be listening. 6 o'clock, you'll be back over these airwaves, my friend. Till next week, you have a good time, and we'll chat then.
All right, we'll find out if Christian Watson and Troy Anderson end up on the same team, so we can finally have the same rooting interests. All right?
Hey, you know what? I might be down your neck of the woods here in about a week. I'll tell you more about that if we get it confirmed. I still owe you a hat, I believe. So
I believe I'm supposed to take a picture with the hat,
well,
which I was hoping you'd forgotten.
No, well, you know what? You walked into it yourself right there, man. I was going to let her go. Not anymore. To the NDSU bookstore I go. We'll talk soon. Chris Atterbury, studio host, Minnesota Twins. I want to thank Linex of Fargo-Moorhead. Find them on Main and West Fargo for your truck accessories. Oh, and so much more. And now, Jiffy Lube. You can get a lot more done in a Jiffy at Jiffy Lube with their 3 convenient Fargo locations. Messages on the way. Yours in the text club. I'll come back to that. This is Afternoons Live. I'm Tyler Axis, and you got it locked into KFGO Fargo. You know, I started my conversation with Chris Atterbury saying, hey, look, a win's a win. It's a win. I don't care how they come as long as we keep accumulating them. Tyler, the horrible fielding by the White Sox covered up truly horrible base running by the Twins. It does not matter to me whatsoever. As long as a win is a win and we keep accumulating them, especially when we have against an AL Central opponent. It's been I hope that you've been taking in those games. Whether, I don't care if it's TV or if you've been to Target Field, it's been a little cold. There's been, I wonder how many times it's been above 60 or 70 in Minneapolis during a Twins game. I think I was lucky on that Saturday that we were able to go because the sun was shining. It wasn't exactly sweltering hot out, but at least the sun was shining. You can tell today how big of a difference that makes. But it'll get warmer. It's just such a great atmosphere. And especially, as we're saying, it certainly adds a little bit more if you're winning. And it's fun. So, if not, of course, it's free right here on this radio station. That is your home for Twins baseball, KFGO. Later on, you'll hear Chris in the game right here, starting at 6 o'clock. I'm going to guess first pitch is at 6:40 tonight. Don't hold that to me. Tyler, don't let Chris Atterbury off easy with a sharp NDSU baseball cap. Get a photo of him in the warmest days, bison yarn and ball on top. The bet was, because if you missed, obviously NDSU, being an alum and being a season ticket holder for all those years, even before we're winning championships, I've been fortunate enough to be able to take this show down to Frisco and bring you some of the sounds, in particular from Wild Pitch. Well, Chris Atterbury, Montana State. So we had this wager going on during this year's championship game, in which if we won, those bison hats that are of like the big bison, that he was going to have to wear one. I was going to ship it down to him. But here's a little secret. We might be broadcasting down from Target Field in like a week and a half. So if I'm able to make this work, and I get to go play catch in essence down there, I will make him take that photo. I will be with him, and we'll blast it all over these social media networks of KFGO. He got my word. I'm not going to let him off easy. Tyler, Sammy Hagar was famous before he replaced David Lee Roth and Van Halen. The huge hit, Can't Drive 55. I'm aware of the hit. That was before he was with Van Halen? Because my timeline now is even more goofed up. Because I thought, okay, he did his little stint with Van Halen. David Lee Roth, he went out. He got Hagar in. And then I thought Can't Drive 55 came out after that. Shows how much my timeline is. Back in, what did he say? That come out in the late 80s? Was Can't Drive 55? Do the Google for me. I'm going to say late 80s. I will say 88 as a guess, as Eric Johnson, my producer, does do the Google back there. Here's what's coming up. We got KFGO News. Paul Jurgens will get you all the latest. After that, instead of having Rusty Halverson in just for a little quick chat, there was a hearing out in Congress, and it got heated. There were fireworks because it's about the meat packers. And you and I have had conversations for quite some time about what this, 4 meat packers controlling, 80% of the market, what that has done. And it hasn't been good. So this hearing's unfolding, and the accusations that are coming from the executives, people just not even showing up because they're fearful of some retribution. This is all going on in a congressional hearing. But it impacts what you're paying for your meat when you go to the grocery store. So we're going to have that, because there's audio that you have got to hear when we come back. Did you get an answer for me?
I did. You were close. 1984. Recorded and released in 84.
Not close enough. That 4 years doesn't feel close to me. That's early 80s, my brother. All right, we'll get you caught up with KFGO, and I'll give you an update. I know Eric Johnson did his due diligence, put a request in about our conversation, a follow-up, and given an equal opportunity, but we're not going to have that opportunity, unfortunately, at least not today. I'll tell you more about that in regards to Castleton before I get on out of here at 5 o'clock. I'm Tyler Axis. You're listening to 790 AM, 94.1 and 104.7 FM, KFGO.
News and weather this hour brought to you by Dakota Monument. Dakota Monument Company, making memories last forever. Call for an in-home consultation.
Fargo-Moorhead, mostly sunny. It's 47 degrees. I'm Paul Jerkins. 3 people are facing a number of charges after a traffic stop and drug bust on I-94 near Moorhead. Investigators said they had information that the 3 men arrested had been bringing drugs from the Twin Cities to Fargo-Moorhead. 2 traffic stops were attempted on the interstate, but both drivers tried to get away from Clay County deputies. Both cars were eventually stopped. During searches, nearly 1,100 fentanyl pills were found, along with methamphetamine. The street value of the drugs is nearly $40,000. It's the 3rd significant drug seizure in Moorhead in the past several weeks. Fentanyl, meth, and marijuana were discovered in the earlier cases, and 4 people were arrested and charged. Minnesota's first winners of a Mega Millions jackpot, $110 million, are a married couple and have chosen the cash option of just under $67 million before taxes. They're remaining anonymous as state law allows, but did share part of their story with lottery headquarters, the state lottery's Erica Helvig Anderson.
The wife has been playing basically the same numbers for years now, and she takes occasionally breaks from playing, but she's been pretty faithful since the beginning of 2021. And she said, thank goodness, if I had seen those numbers and I didn't have a ticket. But luckily, she did have a ticket.
The couple says before they claimed the prize, they took time to assemble a team, including a lawyer, financial advisor, and accountant. They say their immediate plans are typical. They'd like to purchase a house and a car and travel. The ticket was sold for the April 12th Mega Millions drawing. The holiday convenience store was sold, and Ramsey was given a $50,000 bonus. 47. This is KFGO News. This is KFGO News. A Sanford Health AirMed fixed-wing air ambulance collided with a bird in Fargo this morning. AirMed Director Tim Myers says the plane was departing Hector International Airport when the collision happened. Myers says due to the fast response of the pilot, that plane landed safely. There was 1 patient on board. There are no injuries to the patient or flight crew. The plane, which is based in Dickinson, sustained minor damage. North Dakota's acting U.S. attorney and a district judge in Jamestown are among the finalists for an open district judgeship in Fargo.
The Judicial Nominating Committee sent the names of 4 applicants to Governor Doug Burgum, who has conducted interviews. The person selected would replace East Central District Judge Thomas Olson, who is retiring for health reasons. Acting U.S. Attorney Nick Chase, Southeast Judicial District Judge Cherie Clark, Fargo Attorney Monty Mertz, and East Central District Court Judicial Referee Stephanie Hayden are the finalists. A spokesman for Governor Burgum says he expects an announcement on the vacancy by the end of the week. Tasha Carvel, News Radio, KFGO.
It is spring cleanup week soon in Fargo and across the metro area. Fargo's cleanup week collection totals have been down significantly during the pandemic. The city's asking that residents wait to put any cleanup week debris out until the night before their scheduled pickup. That coincides with their recycling day. Recycling coordinator Jen Pickett.
We say the night before because when the people are driving through town looking for treasures, they oftentimes make a big mess, and that just makes more work for us.
Pickett says crews will not pick up building materials like wood or concrete. They also do not collect electronics like computers or televisions or other hazardous material. Cleanup week actually lasts 2 weeks in Fargo. It begins on Monday, which is also the start of the City Forestry Department's brush collection season. KFGO Weather Center forecast from meteorologist Tom Szymanski. Close to 50 this afternoon. We're at 49 now. Partly to mostly cloudy, 36 overnight. Chance of rain, clouds tomorrow and 50. Mostly sunny, it's 47. Paul Jerkins, News Radio, KFGO.
I'm going to get you caught up with CBS National News now. Typically, we visit with Rusty Alverson in between this little window. I need a whole hallway. I need more time. I need more space because there's fireworks going on in the halls of Congress. There's a hearing earlier today, the House Ag Committee, about examining, the unfair practices in the cattle markets. Well, fireworks were exploding. Wild accusations being thrown around in that hearing. Rusty's got audio cut up, and we're going to have that conversation when we come back after the CBS News. This is KFGO Fargo. Don't go anywhere. It's the funky Wickeds in the back with the guitar that gets Carl Douglas. He's a one-hit wonder, I would assume, Carl Douglas.
Maybe.
Have
you ever heard Elvis do the live version of this in Vegas?
No.
It's good.
Are you being serious?
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up. I forget you're an Elvis guy.
Yeah.
Elvis live in Vegas, Kung Fu Fighting. You look it up back there. Eric Johnson is my producer. IQ giving him tasks today.
Yeah.
He's come through 2 of 3.
That's
pretty good. It ain't bad. There's still an hour and a half left of the show, though.
Get you into the Hall of Fame.
Well, and the one I did everything I could.
That's true. The last one, the one in which he swung and missed, that wasn't his fault. So we'll talk about that in the last hour here. There's verbal fighting going on out in the House Ag Committee today.
Yep.
And when he came in saying, hey, here's what's going on, I go, give me time. Because there's a lot of people listening that are impacted by this. I mean, whether you're raising cattle or you're consuming cattle.
Correct.
And it's been noticeable about increasing costs. Yes, inflation. People are, but even before that. And I think during the pandemic, when some of these plants were closed down for a little while, A, B, or C, and then that was deemed essential services, it brought this industry to the forefront of a lot of people's minds that probably just, well, you know what, I go to the store and I grab my pound of beef.
Yeah.
But I'm glad the spotlight's finally been on it, because there's things that aren't going as smoothly as what they should for both sides of this equation, the consumer and the cattle and the ranchers. So walk me through. You've been following along all day today.
Yeah, well, as you said, Tyler, a lot more people want to shed light on the situation and understand what's going on in this very, very complex cattle market. And the House Ag Committee today holding a hearing to talk about price discrepancies, transparency, alleged unfair practices in the cattle markets. And House Ag Chair David Scott opened up the hearing by saying consolidation in the cattle industry since the 1980s has been alarming.
Over that same period. In one analysis that I read, the authors noted that over 500,000 ranchers have gone out of business since the 80s. This threatens the food security of our great nation. The average is out to about 17,000 cattle operations a year. This statistic is highly worrisome.
Now, on panel one of the hearing today, Tyler, they had three cattle producers, one from Missouri, one from Montana, and also Don Schiefelbein. He's from Kimball, Minnesota. He's a cattle producer and president of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. However, Chairman Scott said a fourth witness, a rancher, decided not to testify.
Due to intimidation and threats to this person's livelihood, to this person's reputation, they chose not to participate out of fear. Witness intimidation is unacceptable, and it is not conduct befitting this treasured institution, the Congress of the United States.
That was also heard yesterday during the Senate Ag Committee hearing. Deb Fisher from Nebraska, co-sponsor of that Cattle Transparency Act, she said that she had sent a letter or reached out to Nebraska cattlemen to see if one of their members would like to testify. She got a letter back saying nobody wants to step out front.
See, and now that's the red light flashing for me, is the fact that you've got such powerful interests in this whole process. Now, it's pretty easy in my mind to jump to conclusions as to who would be upset enough to, be intimidating. As your congressman said, that there's threats out there, and it's because people are starting to peel back and ask those questions. They've been, quite frankly, getting along pretty damn good now, as was pointing out from the 80s in this consolidation here. But to get to that level is very worrisome at the same time, because if you can't have the witness testimony, which is what this is in front of these hearings, it's tough to actually act on exactly what's wrong here.
Yeah. We mentioned last hour how there was a little bit of partisan kind of spirit to today's hearing. During his opening statement, Ranking Member G.T. Thompson of Pennsylvania said he was disappointed about the circumstances surrounding this Wednesday hearing. In his words, demonizing packers out of political convenience.
We know that, and I think we're committed to doing the right things to help small processors become medium become large, and have greater competition. Yet at every turn, this administration has obsessively pointed the finger at the packing industry, blaming them almost single-handedly for rising food costs. They've done so via blog posts, contrived public events, and press briefings, all without any acknowledgement of the culpability of their own reckless spending and heavy-handed regulatory agenda. And I fear that today's hearing is nothing more than perpetuating the Biden administration's attempt to continue that desperate, baseless narrative.
Let me take a swing at this one, if you will, Rusty, because you're just bringing me the audio, and you know what? I got the opinions here. G.T. Thompson, ranking member from Pennsylvania, Republican. Does he understand, or does he follow along with the history of how really this onion peel started to unravel, that it was underneath the previous administration, rightfully so, and Donald J. Trump as president, through his Department of Justice, that said, you know what, we got to start investigating and try to find some answers into what's going on with these Packers. So if he's going to be throwing out these baseless narratives, he got to get caught up on the history of all this, because at the time we were all applauding, myself as a Democrat and the Republicans that listen to the show, saying, good, it's about time somebody does something here. And one thing when people say you never go after the Biden administration, Tyler, one, you're wrong, because one of them was with the Merrick Garland appointment. I was hoping that he would continue this investigation. We didn't have, and I don't know that we have gotten an update necessarily from the DOJ on what they're unraveling, but they're still at least on it. So if he's going to be saying that this is a partisan political convenience, he could not be further wrong as to how this really started to snowball up on this investigation. It started with a Republican president. There, I got that. I want to ask your opinion on that, okay?
Okay, thanks.
You just bring me the news, brother.
You bet, you bet. Well, if you'd like to hear from Rodney Davis from Illinois, he echoed similar comments to G.T. Thompson.
Yeah, let's hear from him as well.
Although today's hearing is very compelling, hearing from each of you, but at the same time, this committee has disappointed me in the process because we have yet to talk about meaningful Farm Bill oversight. And more importantly, I don't think our discussion today actually gets to the root cause of the issues that most Americans are facing. Inflation, it's what's for dinner would actually be a more appropriate name for this hearing. After all, the latest CPI report showed the largest 12-month increase in the price of food since 1981. And here's a spoiler. I don't think it's all due to rising beef costs. I'm certain it has a lot more to do with this administration's reckless spending and policies than it does consolidation in the beef industry, as the White House and the chairman so desperately seem to want us to believe.
Okay, Rodney Davis, Illinois.
Okay. Again, here, let me commentate for a moment. I would like to get a pin and put it down, and then I'll get a ball of yarn and talk about the price of beef and when it started rising. I acknowledge at the top of this conversation that inflation certainly playing a role here. But if you're going to talk about the compellingness and the price of what that beef has been increasingly costing, unfortunately not going to those that are raising it, it's not just due to inflation. And I think the purpose of these hearings, albeit very important, is to figure out what was going on prior to inflation taking over. Now, the other thing, Rusty, that really struck me when he came in saying, this is what's going on, these are the fireworks, is, there are industries and there has been unfortunate depression. I mean, we have helplines out there. I know that the North Dakota Farmers Union has been on top of trying to make sure, hey, if you're struggling with things, here's the numbers you can call. I don't know that there's an industry that's been more impacted than farming and ranching when it comes to some of this because of a variety of things.
Yes, and Congressman Davis, as he said, it was compelling testimony at times, and one of the producers on that panel won today, Coy Young, a cow-calf producer from Missouri. If I had to take a guess, probably about your age, Tyler. He was there with his wife testifying, and he said during his testimony, the Big Four Packers have blood on their hands.
Family legacies and century farms are being ripped out of their hands, and families are losing their loved ones from an unprecedented amount of suicides. Farming and ranching has the most suicides in any industry due to stress, a shrinking bottom line, and that's fueled by the greed and capitalistic nature that's everyday business in the Big Four that are in question here today. There's blood on the hands of the Packers and leaders in Washington, and no one seems to care. No one seems to want to do anything about it. I know we live in a country where capitalism reigns supreme, and it's every man for himself, but Packers take capitalism to a whole new level.
Okay, lots of frustration, lots of frustration during today's hearing. And one of those frustrations is with the DOJ and what you spoke about, Tyler. Don Schiefelbein, president of the NCBA from Kimball, Minnesota, commented on the government's ongoing investigation into alleged price fixing and cattle industry consolidation.
The bottom line is, when you look at it, we've asked the DOJ to do an investigation on the beef packers almost 2 years ago, right? Where are we today? We have not heard boo or squat. We don't know what the situation is, what the response ought to be. So what cattle producers need more than ever is answers to the questions. Is everything being done correctly? And if not, how can we adjust it to make sure things are done fairly? And to me, the laws are in the books. It's enforcement that matters and making sure we're carrying out the rules that are already in place to ensure that we have a fair market system.
Yeah, South Dakota Republican Dusty Johnson echoing those frustrations regarding the government investigation into the cattle markets and the lack of updates coming from the Department of Justice.
You mentioned earlier that we haven't heard boo or squat, which is exactly the right phrase, sir.
Sorry.
About the investigations in the wake of the Holcomb fire and COVID. I mean, let's set this information free. It seems to me that that is one key thing we could do to bring a higher level of understanding to what's going on from an enforcement perspective and tell those of us in this room maybe what we could be helping the DOJ do better with regard to enforcement. I'll give you an opportunity to react.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to a pretty simple principle you learn raising kids, right? The boogeyman disappears when you turn the light on, right? And there's a boogeyman out there. We don't know if it's real or not real because the light's off. We need the light flipped back on to know whether or not the boogeyman exists.
There you go. Some of the highlights from today's House Agriculture Committee hearing.
Passion, frustration, I get it. This is great reporting, by the way, Rusty.
Thank you.
You know, and I'm going to take a moment here. I mean, South Dakota Republican Dusty Johnson, he gets it.
Yeah.
You know, I've had a chance to visit with Representative Johnson, and there's on this very issue, I think that he has been leading pretty good on, quite well. I question North Dakota's delegation why they have not really taken up this mantle as well and run following Dusty Johnson's lead. I hope they do. The frustration that has been displayed of not having that light as the president of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association talking about. I get it. There's people out there listening. They get it. They agree. The one thing that I'm worried about, and you've raised this before, is you got that farm bill coming up here. And if you're going to be hearing some of the false narratives that have come out in the accusations from Republicans and Democrats, if that muddies the waters in just getting a farm bill done. Do you have any reporting or any thoughts that you've heard on that?
Not yet.
Early on this?
Yeah, the best I can give you on that is some of the old hands when it comes to passing a farm bill, like Colin Peterson and Pat Roberts, speaking to farm broadcasters at Commodity Classic, and that was their biggest concern. As Colin would say, we got to keep them out of the ditch. We've got to keep them middle of the road and get it done.
Well, I didn't hear, at least in some of the clips, that being the case, but we'll follow up on that at a later time. Rusty, this is great work. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
If people want to check out more, KFGO.com, click on that agriculture tab. Rusty Alverson, Sarah Heinrich, the best in the biz. You can learn more there. Messages coming into 35270. That's the iConsultants of North Dakota Text Club. I'll get back to those after this KFGO weather update from Too Tall Tom Schmansky. Then we'll wrap up the second hour of Afternoons Live on a Wednesday afternoon next. Details. It's about details. Pick any subject, pick any moment in your life. So it comes down to details. And for this individual in Detroit, it was not paying close enough attention to the details. Now, I think we've all been close to making a mistake and maybe a purchase. That's what happened to this dude. His name's Aaron. Can't find his last name, probably doesn't want to share it. He was scrolling through on one of his social media feeds, and he saw what he thought was Red Hot Chili Peppers tickets for a small, intimate venue that was like 400 people. It was at a local venue out there. It was called the Magic Bag, which I have no idea what that is. But the tickets were under $20. He decided, okay, I'm going to make this purchase. He thought he struck gold. But he wasn't paying attention to the details because it was not the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He purchased tickets for a group called the Red Not Chili Peppers, which is a cover band for the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
I have seen almost the same story, only there's a band that's called the Red Hot Chili Pipers.
Yep, and they're bagpipes. So no, yeah, he didn't get the bagpipers. He got the Red Not Chili Peppers. He's angry. He's angry about it. He says and claims, I was completely sober when I made this purchase, but it was all in capital letters, so it was quite confusing. He wants his money back. The manager said no. So he's probably going to attend this concert.
Is a ticket?
He bought 4 of them. Okay, you and 3 friends, go watch the cover band. Stop being so ornery. It's the details. Details on local headlines. Paul Jurgens has those. He's in the KFGO News Center. Get you caught up with those. Then we'll come back and you made this microphone your cell phone the whole rest of the way on Afternoons Live. Don't go anywhere.
KFGO News, sunny, 47 degrees. 3 men are facing a number of charges after 2 traffic stops and a drug bust at I-94 near Moorhead. Investigators say they had information that the 3 had been bringing drugs from the Twin Cities to Fargo-Moorhead. 2 traffic stops were attempted on the interstate this morning, but both drivers tried to get away from Clay County deputies. Both cars were eventually stopped. During searches, nearly 1,100 fentanyl pills were found, along with methamphetamine. The street value of the drugs is nearly $40,000. It's the third significant drug seizure in Clay County in the past several weeks. Fentanyl, meth, and marijuana were discovered in the earlier cases, and 4 people were arrested and charged. A Sanford Health AirMed fixed-wing air ambulance collided with a bird in Fargo this morning. AirMed Director Tim Meyer says the plane was departing Hector International Airport when the collision happened. Meyer says the fast response of the pilot prevented any significant issue. That plane landed safely. There was 1 patient on board. No one hurt. The plane, which is based in Dickinson, sustained minor damage. The winners of a Mega Millions jackpot ticket sold at a suburban St. Paul convenience store have now stepped forward. The couple took the cash option of nearly $67 million. They've decided to remain anonymous, which is allowed under a new state law. The couple told lottery administrators that they purchased scratch-off tickets and a pizza in April 1990, on the first day that scratch tickets were sold in Minnesota. It was also their first date. The wife says she's been playing the same numbers for many years and discovered that she won while checking her phone the night of the April 12th draw. The Red River is fluctuating around 46 feet today in Grand Forks, East Grand Forks. The Red hit a high of 45.82 feet early this morning. Greg Gust with the National Weather Service says the water will not disappear overnight, but he says it should not be a prolonged event. That one wild card is the potential for more rain at the end of the week.
The water's coming off the landscape quickly, so you should expect the rivers to go down a little more quickly than the typical winter snowmelt runoff, somewhere between this and what a summer peak would be.
Governor Burgum plans to request a presidential disaster declaration for both flooding and storms that left thousands without power in western North Dakota. Partly to mostly cloudy overnight. Fargo-Moorhead, we expect a low of about 36. Tomorrow, clouds, chance of rain, 50. Also a rain chance for Friday, cloudy. The best rain chances would be Friday afternoon, 53. 48 degrees. Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
Okay, yesterday on Afternoons Live, we had an opportunity to visit with the chief operating officer of Thoroldson Ethanol outside of Castleton. Ryan Thorpe joined the program, and I appreciated his time to come on and explain why they've come out and opposed the proposed soybean plant that is being discussed. And it's been discussed quite some time. In fact, Afternoons Live right here on KFGL was the first to bring the concerned citizens on to talk about why they were concerned. We had the city development on to explain the ins and outs as to what they had been up to and what their conversations were. And we've extended that offer to people on all sides of this issue, because there's not everyone's opposed, and I get that. And the same goes for, what's going on in Grand Forks with the corn mill. We've offered, not everyone's accepted, and not everyone's been wanting to or willing and jumping for joy to come on and explain why they're for or against some of these things. And I get it. That's why when we talk about this, the rift that's happening in these communities is something that, had leadership been present, instead of just having a podium set up with a big, beautiful backdrop and having the cameras on so you can say, look what we're doing for you, could have been avoided had leadership been present and then consistent to avoid some of the tensions, I think, that are certainly boiling over in a variety of these moments. And it's not a partisan issue by any means, boys and girls. In all these areas, whether it's the carbon capture pipeline of Summit, whether it's the corn mill up in Grand Forks or the soybean plant in Castleton, you've got people from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of industries coming together or butting heads against each other on these things. So if you're going to be blasting anything about, well, there you go, being a partisan, these three issues are not that. Leadership style is what I'm frustrated with here. It's not that Doug Burgum or his administration is Republican. I could care less. In fact, I've given credit to the administration when he first took over as governor in this state, because he did what Jack Dalrymple and Drew Wrigley did not do during the DAPL protest. He got in his vehicle, he went down there, and he talked with them. Their concerns, what they were willing and what they were wanting. He did the work. He led in that moment. Now, I don't know what changed from that day to today in the approach of the governor's office. And quite frankly, the people that are in the tower out there. You go through the Department of Commerce, pick any that have their fingerprints on these projects. But something failed here. And there's a reason why you've got people in these communities, these neighbors, upset with each other. And quite upset at each other, according to an email or some emails that I received earlier. Yesterday we had Ryan Thorpe on, as I was telling you, with the ethanol plant in Castleton. They're opposed. If you missed that conversation, which a lot of you were listening, and I do appreciate that, and I'm sure a lot of you are listening right now to this commentary, and you're welcome to join it at 237-5948 or at 35270. If you missed his reasoning, I'd encourage you, whether it's at kfgo.com or wherever you get your podcast, go and listen to it. And whether you agree or disagree. Now, certainly there's a lot of people that are on either side of their opinion on this. And, when I get emails forwarded, presented, provided, however you want to put it, from, an important individual in that community, using that interview and the comments provided on this show as to, going after that individual. That's why we're talking about this again. And Brad Sessler, Brad, if you're listening, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. I know that my producer, Eric Johnson, reached out because we want you to have an opportunity. I do hope you reconsider to come on and share why you're in favor of the project. I mean, I'm not saying it's either for or against. I'm providing an opportunity for whoever wants to have their voices heard on this. Something that I wish the governor's office would have done for you. But we'll do it here on KFGO for you. And going quite hard at the commentary and the opinions of the Thoroldson ethanol plant, and mainly the COO and Ryan Thorpe. This is another invitation for whether it's Brad, and I understand that Brad was a little upset that we threw out where he works, and I do want to clarify that in a follow-up email. He wanted to make it abundantly clear, and I'll do that for him right now, since he didn't want to come on himself, that the opinions that he shared were just his, and not a reflection on the place of business where he is in charge. So I think that's fair to make that abundantly clear for you as listeners as well. But when I read through this commentary and when I hear from residents of Castleton or the surrounding area that have left me voicemails, sent me emails, have called into this show, one thing is clear, that there are people that are not happy with each other. And that is what is so damn unfortunate about this entire situation, is knowing that, yes, Castleton, again, where I come from, Castleton is a big town. But it's small enough to where, you know what, you still do the two-finger wave as you're driving by. You know, you say hello when you stop at the coffee shop. You know, you acknowledge each other. And what I fear is because of what's been put upon you, because of a failed leadership approach, saying, well, look what we're doing for you. Instead of really digging in on the front end, saying, how can we make this work? We got an idea. It's a long ways off, but we want to hear your input here. Is this location okay? What it concerns, instead of having it be so far along in this process that it's almost felt like for a lot of the people that have reached out to me that they feel helpless, that the machine's been put together, and there ain't a whole heck of a lot they can do, that their voices and their concerns aren't being heard other than on this very airwave, it could have been avoided. Now, there's going to be a vote coming up on Monday for the city commission and the I don't want to say it's an accusation, but the claim, I suppose, is the way to approach it in Ryan Thorpe's letter that he had sent. And that's what started our conversation yesterday, is that you have to have a supermajority on the city council to approve a zoning change. Now, there was a meeting earlier this week, and that's why I questioned the timing of Ryan Thorpe's letter, that it was hours before the planning and zoning committee, saying, you know what, there were people that were willing to come out long before that got to this point to say their piece as to why they were opposed. So I do question the timing. He answered that question. Not everybody's happy with that answer, but he did answer as to why. But if you're going to have that claim and that it's 2/3, I think you can only afford to have one no vote on this. So we're going to be following along, and I have no doubt that the city commission out there is feeling the pressure, because I'm feeling it right here, and I'm just a talk show host on 790 AM, 94.1 and 104.7 FM KFGO. But again, this is where, as I was saying earlier on in the show, as I was diving through what had been provided to me, if there has ever been examples to point out how important not only congressional races are or legislative races, but those city, the commission, the counties, townships, all of that, that's coming all up. And this has just been an abundant example of how important these jobs are. And it's not always easy, but certainly the eyes are on Castleton for the next few days as this vote's coming forward. But I'm going to say it one more time, whether it's for Brad or anybody else that wants to have their side saying, look, I'm in favor of this plant because of A, B, and C. What I heard on KFGO from others saying that they're opposed to it are wrong because of, C, D, and E. By all means, from 2 to 5, it is available to you. And you can call in unprompted to 237-5948, or you can text me at 35270. More messages coming in. I will take a quick pause here. This is a platform to have it weighed out. It's unfortunate that it wasn't brought up earlier in this process because of the approach done. This top-down approach from a tower out in Bismarck all the way down to where you are as far as your neighborhood, it's not the right approach. It's not the way that North Dakota had been doing it. I don't think it's the way it should be done going forward. I'll come up with some more of these messages and your thoughts when we come back here on the Wednesday afternoon. You got locked into KFGO Fargo. I'm Tyler Axtis. This is Afternoons Live. sometimes I wonder, we hear, but I don't know that we always listen. For example, in my text club, that's the iConsultants of North Dakota, 35270. Tyler says not a partisan issue, but if he can slam Governor Burgum 5 times per show, he gladly will. I'm not sure if you were listening here about the praise I gave, for example, of how he actually went down and handled the Dakota Access pipeline protests. And the question, which I think is a fair question, is what changed from his approach there to any other program or proposal that's going on right now? Because he got it right on day one. I don't think he's getting it right with these approaches. And if you just want to simply hear praise of Governor Burgum, I'm sure there are other shows around this area that will gladly do that. But that's not going to be here unless he's done something that I quite frankly agree with. And I think that we've been quite fair on a variety of things that Governor Burgum has been right on. And I started that whole commentary with one right off the bat. So again, hearing, maybe not listening. Turn it up just a little bit. 35270. Tyler, I have a hard time believing that the Castleton plan has come up so fast and people didn't know. Perhaps lack of actually paying attention to city meetings as some of the issue. The last part I can't speak to on this particular project. As far as people maybe not paying attention to those city and county meetings, township boards, look, I'm not going to say I'm perfect at that either. One thing that stood out to me on the Grand Forks issue, for example, when we've had the folks up there that have been trying to figure out and get answers to the questions and concerns they have, is now Grand Forks, that's like the greatest pastime up there. People are watching those city commission meetings. That's why these examples that are before us right now, these three that I keep coming back to because there's so many similarities in them, it proves again, you got to start paying attention, not just to those candidates, also to the reporting of those minutes and those meetings. And I got to say, you know who does the best at all of that? This news team at KFGO, Don Haney, Paul Juergens, now with Tasha Carvel, they are getting you the details. KFGO, Don Haney was the first to find out about this and report it in the paper right here on KFGO on our website and talk about it on these airwaves. So I'm proud of the news team for doing their job on all this. More messages piling in. I will get to all of that after that. KFGO news teams get you all the latest local news. Also, I got some other things. Tomorrow's going to be a busy day. You can stop out on a variety of things. I'll tell you where and when in the final half hour of Afternoons Live. You're listening to KFGO Fargo.
KFGO News, Fargo-Moorhead sunny now. It's 49. I'm Paul Jurgens. Overnight, about 36. Three men are facing a number of charges after two traffic stops and a drug bust on I-94 near Moorhead. Investigators say they had information that the three had been bringing drugs from the Twin Cities to Fargo-Moorhead. Two traffic stops were attempted on the interstate, but both drivers tried to get away from Clay County deputies. Both cars were eventually stopped. During searches, nearly 1,100 fentanyl pills were found, along with methamphetamine. The street value of the drugs is nearly $40,000. It's the third significant drug seizure in Clay County in the past several weeks. Fentanyl, meth, and marijuana were discovered in the earlier cases, and 4 people were arrested and charged. A Twin Cities couple who won a recent Mega Millions jackpot of $110 million has taken the cash option of nearly $67 million before taxes.
State Lottery's Erica Helvick Anderson says the couple has chosen to remain anonymous.
They're excited to get that ticket out of their hands and see if this will make it start to feel real.
The couple bought the winning Mega Millions ticket at the Holiday in Ramsey before coming forward. The couple hired a lawyer, financial advisor, and an accountant. The newest multimillionaires also say they plan to buy a new house, car, and retire from their jobs this summer.
Reporter Adam Carter, the store which sold the ticket, received $50,000. 48 degrees. This is KFGO News. .48 degrees. This is KFGO News. North Dakota's acting U.S. attorney and a district judge in Jamestown are among the finalists for an open district judgeship in Fargo. The Judicial Nominating Committee sent the names of 4 applicants to Governor Burgum, who has conducted interviews. The person selected replaced East Central District Judge Thomas Olson, who was retiring for health reasons. Acting U.S. Attorney Nick Chase, Southeast Judicial District Judge Cherie Clark, Fargo Attorney Monty Mertz, and East Central District Court Judicial Referee Stephanie Hayden are the finalists. The spokeswoman for Governor Burgum says he expects an announcement of the vacancy by the end of the week. A state investigation launched after George Floyd was killed by a Minneapolis police officer has determined that the department engages in a pattern of race discrimination. Minnesota's Department of Human Rights announced the finding of the nearly 2-year investigation. The department has the power to enforce the state's Human Rights Act, which makes it illegal for police departments to discriminate against someone due to their race. A rural Lake Lillian, Minnesota man is dead after a reported accidental shooting in the Wilmer Lakes area. Reporter J.P. Cola.
The Candy-Ojai County Sheriff's Department says at 10:34 p.m. Tuesday they got a 911 report of a gunshot victim. The caller told officers a firearm had accidentally discharged, hitting a 64-year-old man in the head, killing him. Officials say the identity of the man will be released at a later time, and the case remains under investigation by the Sheriff's Office, the BCA, and the Midwest Medical Examiner's Office.
A Bismarck man has been sentenced to 6 years in prison for a 2021 New Year's Day crash that killed a South Dakota woman in Bismarck. 20-year-old Kenyon Eagle pleaded guilty in January. A South Central District judge suspended all but 6 years of a 15-year prison sentence. Eagle was accused of driving drunk and going the wrong way in the westbound lanes of the Bismarck Expressway. His Becca collided head-on with a car driven by Tiffany Shaving at Cherry Creek, South Dakota. She died at the scene. 2 passengers in her car were hurt. Fargo-Moorhead, overnight, meteorologist Tom Shemansky is expecting a partly to mostly cloudy sky, about 36. We'll have a chance of rain tomorrow, cloudy and 50. Rain chance also for Friday, 53. Breezy, occasional rain Saturday, high near 50 and 44. Areas of light rain on Sunday. Fargo-Moorhead, it is sunny and 48. Paul Jurgens, News Radio KFGO.
Thursday, tomorrow. Week's flying by, at least for me. Maybe that sun being out helps a little bit. There are a couple opportunities I want to remind you about, though, because you're invited to both. We're going to kick off tomorrow morning, Coffee with KFGO at The Grove in Horace, North Dakota, which has got to be one of the fastest growing parts in the entire state, nay, the entire region. Horace 7 o'clock to 10 or 11. In fact, I think I might have just talked the other guy into going to 11, so we'll let you know. If not, we're going to be hanging out either way, starting at 7 o'clock. Coffee, donuts, that's on us. I hear that this place, The Grove, is really known for a couple of their pastries. Come on out. You're invited. Love to see you there. Because I'm going to stop out there, hang out for a while. I'm going to come back here, do Afternoons Live. We'll be visiting over these airwaves. We got Audibles. We got Spencer Worth, the Meat Dude. Now sponsored by Audubon Meats. Thanks to Audubon Meats for sponsoring that. And then, after I shut the microphone off, we got a draft party. I'm putting on the Carolina Blue. I'm going on down to the Hi-Ho, 25th Street South. Coverage starts right here on KFU at 4 o'clock. We'll check in with Derek Hansen. And we're going to all hours of the evening, watching the draft. Is Minnesota going to stay at 12? Are they going to pull a Spielman and trade back? I don't know. Neither do you. We'll talk about the draft tomorrow during the show as well. But the reason why you want to stop out at the Hi-Ho in South Fargo, because we're giving away a trip to Kansas City. Not this year, but next year, 2023. Why? Because the NFL draft, you can go there in person. You can check it out. You can come grab a burger, grab a beer. The whole crew's going to be down there. So that's all coming up tomorrow, and you're invited. CBS National News on the way. I see your text messages waiting me at 35270. I'll come back to those as we wrap up the Wednesday edition of Afternoons Live here on KFGO. Honest question for you, and I want you to be as brutally honest as you can. Trust me, I haven't shied away from that ever in the text club. Was I the only person that it took until this year to realize that members of Blur were the Gorillaz? I mean, was that a well-known thing? Did everyone know that but me? Probably people that are wondering, this might be the first time you heard it. I really hope I wasn't alone in that. blew my mind. And now I can hear it. Every time I hear a song 2, which is the only Blur song that I know off the top of my mind, I can hear the Gorillaz. Are you pulling up a Gorillaz song for me back there, please, Eric Johnson, producer of Afternoons Live? You want to know why I probably didn't know? Because music videos, they're so weird from the Gorillaz. It's like those characters.
Well, that's their whole bit, even on stage.
I'm
that.
well aware. That's why I probably didn't know.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't put the face to the face from the Blur to the Gorillaz. Unusual. There's bands that make you think of one friend in your life. And this really makes me think of a childhood friend whom I haven't spoke to in a long time. I wonder how Patrick's doing out there. We watched that video way too many times. That's not why you're listening. You want to talk about the Thorldson commentary on this very airwave, Ryan Thorpe? Sure, we'll dive right back in. Tyler, the Egg Week article with Ryan Thorpe reads like a bit of extortion. Besides the fact that he feels entitled to crop acres in a 50-mile radius of his plant, the fact that he would agree to the crushing plant if the crushing plant group doubled the ethanol plant's corn storage capacity to the tune of $40 million kind of makes you wonder why it wasn't opposed until hours before a meeting, doesn't it? Well, and that's why I asked, because when I look at the timing, that was the first thing that came to mind. And I think about the others that up front, when word got out right here on KFGO, to report on what was being discussed and what was being proposed, there was a group that organized, said, look, here's our concerns. So I do question the timing. Now, he provided an answer as to the timing yesterday during our conversation here, Ryan Thorpe, that is, with Thorldson Management, or Thorldson, Ethanol. Thorldson Management, different namesake, but the thing that I keep coming back to in my mind, and I don't know. I'll ask you as the farmers out there. And I trust that the individual that texted in with that comment is a farmer, based on, I think, some of the previous texts you've sent in shows previously. Is it a corn versus soybean situation? I mean, really, is it? Because in my mind, I go, and maybe things have changed. And I'd asked this question yesterday as well, because for me, when I visit with my farming pals, I mean, if you got corn in one section, you got soybean in another. I mean, it's both. Has that shifted over the last couple of years? Because if so, I haven't heard that. But maybe I'm not visiting with the right individuals about that. I mean, they're also up there throwing canola in the ground whenever they get the chance. And I know they've been chomping at the bit to finally be able to do that. If it ever warms up, and if it ever stays dry enough just to get out and plant. I'm not saying we don't need the moisture, and I certainly don't want to put words in their mouth, because they've been begging for it. Finally got some of that. But that's some of the accusations that's come forward with this, is that it's a corn versus a soybean, and what can be done and where the priorities are going to go if this gets put in. Now, I know there's probably farmers out there saying, look, I can use both. I need both of these things in this area. Now, one thing that I think stood out for me in the comments and the concerns hasn't been, at least from the city side, about the plant itself and what the plant could do to the area. It's the location. And that's where, even hearing it yesterday, and now I know that there's people, including the messages are coming, questioning, well, the location, or, where's mine, is kind of what it sounded like. If a proposal was made saying 30 miles over here, you could, is that the deal breaker? Is it for you as far as a farmer? You have to bring it out 30, 40 more miles. 237-594. I'm going to get to the phone lines and visit with Terry. Terry, appreciate the phone call.
Doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, Tyler.
Good.
If they don't want it up there, we'll take it in Richland County. They can move it down here. I'd take it in a second.
Yep.
I just don't understand this buying thing either. If you're a good corn buyer, the farmers raise both corn and soybeans. That's the normal rotation. There might be some wheat in there. But you think that that shouldn't be a big deal. I don't understand that concept at all.
Terry, that's where I'm at. I thought the regular rotation. So you're agreeing, or at least making me feel more confident when I say that practice has not changed. The rotation's still soybean and corn. So I don't quite get that aspect and that approach either. But that's what's out there, fella. I mean, that's what people are talking about. That
I understand that, but if Cass County or Castleton decides that they don't want that, bring it down here. I'll take it.
Terry, remind me, what was that a part of a conversation earlier? It was, hey, we got two spots in mind, either the Castleton area or down in Richland, or did I misunderstand that?
Well, I don't know what it was with this one, but several years ago, I took a group out to different towns to look at a crushing plant in Richland County, and we had a couple of really nice spots that would have worked, and one was right next to an ethanol plant. And the city was just said, yeah, God, bring it down here. We'll take it. So if they decide not to up there, I hope they look at Richland County.
Well, I assure you, Terry, there's probably other people listening that aren't in this area that are saying the same thing. So, hey, I appreciate the phone call, man.
I'll take the tax base. Roll right now.
Terry,
right,
thanks. Yeah, you take care. 237-5948. There's been a lot of those type of text messages in throughout the course of this conversation that we've had now. Has it dated back January? Is that I think when we started breaking this conversation down? Now, look, if they don't want it, we'll take it. And that goes for a variety of the projects we're talking about here. And that's part of this process as well, as when you look at locations and what is available in any given situation, where's the best solution? Now, if there's already been interest down there, does that weigh into the decision-making as far as the Castleton City Council? Because some of the citizen conversations that I've had that have reached out and left voicemail after voicemail, and when we've had a chance to actually connect, when it comes to that tax base, right? They're saying, well, why are we giving the tax breaks here? That's one of the things on the concern side of these residents of Castleton saying, why are we doing a 15-year abatement? Why instead of doing the full tax regular structure to the school, are we agreeing to getting, X dollar donation every year when you could probably get X percent more if you just paid your regular tax requirement? Now, when it comes to this thing of the tax structure, and when it comes to what's been promised, that's the question that I've routinely asked here. Not just whether it comes to Castleton or Cass County or Grand Forks and Grand Forks County, but from the state side. Because when you think about the infrastructure that's going to be needed in some of these projects, we talk about this prairie dog bill that finally has the funds there because oil has come back and the buckets, as silly as the concept is, they're filling up and they're trickling into these other buckets. So then you can start spending at these other processes and other projects. Well, the buckets are getting full. So you finally have the prairie dog bill that was promised to you. Well, that's state dollars. I wonder what was promised from the state to these particular projects. Because it certainly sounds like there were handshakes, there was agreements. There's a reason why you've had state officials running around to everywhere but the communities after their press conference bragging about what they're doing for you. But what did they promise to these private businesses? I think that's a fair question to ask. And I don't think that's criticism of the administration. I think anyone that's a taxpayer should get that answer. 237-5948. Got a little bit more time for you. I got to get you a weather update. Somebody's wondering what town's in Richland County. I should have asked Terry that question when he was in. Maybe he can text me at 35270. What town's in Richland County is a question, Terry. If you want to provide that answer, we'd appreciate that. We'll wrap up Afternoons Live on a Wednesday following that and see what's coming up on the drive. Jack Sunday. He's going to steer you right into Twins baseball. Chris Atterbury, pregame starts at 6 o'clock right here on KFGO.